The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Hossein Zahed. Hossein is the Director of Data Science and Machine Learning at Capital One. Hossein, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Hossein, I'd like to start with yourself as we do with all of our guests. Could you give us an overview of your journey in technology, from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, and what's led you to where you are today as the Director of Data Science and ML at Capital One?
Of course. So my school background was in statistics and economics. I worked for a short period of time in academia, which was something that I always thought I would end up doing, but life had other plans for me. I worked in consulting for a few years as a sort of a statistics consulting. That's what we used to call it back then. And the great thing about consulting was I got to see a whole lot of different problems that are faced by different industries, different people in different settings. And I got to see how machine learning and predictive modeling in general, be it machine learning tools or AI tools, how they can come in and help solve different business problems. After that, I joined Capital One in 2015 as a data scientist, as an individual contributor, and I got to work on different lines of businesses. Capital One is, of course, a pretty large company with different businesses. And I got to work on multiple lines of business and on very diverse set of problems across the company. I did operations, I did pricing, I did risk modeling. At the moment, I lead the team that is responsible for building and managing the auto finance business's risk models. These are the models that we use to assess how sort of risky customers might be, and then based on that, decide whether or not we want to extend credit to them and how we want to manage the account. All the sort of a different set of responsibilities, managing the risk of machine learning and AI tools across the business and outside of my own team.
Thank you for that, Hossein. I appreciate your background and thank you for sharing your journey. As you referenced, you've ascended after various positions in Capital One to a level of Director of Data Science and ML, while also working on the model risk side. Could you describe what your main responsibilities and functions are, first on the data science and ML side, and then how that intersects with the model risk officer position where you're utilizing the various ML tools?
On the sort of risk modeling side, I'm responsible for a team that is actually quite data scientists, machine learning engineers, data engineers, business analysts, all of them coming together to build risk models and then manage those risk models through time. As the economy changes, as the market conditions change, you need to continuously look at how predictive models work and if they're still appropriate for use or if there's a need for rebuilds, adjustments, and so on. So that is one side of my responsibility. On the model risk side, I wear a sort of a second line hat and helping other teams that are building models in other parts of the company manage the risk associated with their models and oversee the development and validation of those models before they're deployed to market, as well as the monitoring and ongoing risk management of them through time.
So, Hossein, you've talked about your role being multifaceted, but there's also a broader data org with each division having certain functions. Could you talk to us about the larger data science and machine learning ecosystem at play at Capital One?
Yes. So our teams are very cross-functional, meaning we try to organize around the problem statement, what the customer problem statement is, and what we're trying to deliver as a solution to that. And that usually involves bringing in multiple job families and organizing in a slightly different way than the traditional large org vertical structures. That I can use the example of my own team. I have data scientists, I have machine learning engineers, I have data engineers, business analysts, all of them working together. If you were to see them in a meeting, it might sometimes even be hard to tell who is the data scientist and who is the business analyst because they're also intertwined what they do and work on. This is very exciting. I think the opportunity that it provides is that I, for example, as a data scientist, I get to learn a lot about tech. Get to learn about data, about product, about business, and so on. So this just makes the whole work environment very exciting and very energetic.
Hussein, Capital One are obviously a well-known brand name in the world of financial services, but in the data science community, Capital One was broadly regarded as being an early adopter who has been AI first from its inception. Could you talk to us about that journey and why Capital One was AI focused first and foremost from day one, and what that's meant to the business to where it is now?
So Capital One is regarded as a relatively large bank, but compared to a lot of the other banks, it's actually pretty young. We're still being led by our founder. So Capital One was like maybe a first fintech when fintechs weren't yet a thing. The strategy on which the company was built from day one was what we call information-based strategy, a sort of an emphasis on using data, using predictive analytics, and using, back then they weren't called machine learning and AI, but basically machine learning and AI as we know them today are basically a continuation of that path. The soul of it all is how can you leverage the data that's around you to make better business decisions. And I think that is in the Capital One DNA. It's been there from day one. What I think we've done a pretty good job on over time is maintaining that strategy and evolving it through time and adopting, of course, new technology as it becomes available to this day to follow through with that idea of information-based decision-making. You would see data-driven decision-making pretty much adopted all across the company. This is, of course, not as easy in the kind of environment that we're in. If your listeners are familiar with, finance is an asymmetric risk return environment where you have to be very careful about the decisions you're making and the risk that you're taking on. So keeping that innovative side, I think, is something that Capital One has done very well over the years.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
One of the other things that Capital One has been known for since early in its launch as a business is the environment for training, developing, and giving its employees and staff access to modern data science tools and machine learning. As a director in the business, someone who's involved in strategy, leadership, and involved in the hiring of future talent, could you talk to us about what it is that you communicate to your team, your staff, and candidates alike about why Capital One is such a great environment for data scientists and machine learning engineers?
I think Capital One is, especially compared to a lot of other finance companies, arguably a little bit ahead on the technology side and the kind of technology that it adopts and uses. For example, we migrated all of our tech stack to the cloud years ago. It's something that a lot of other companies are still struggling with. So I would basically say that, first of all, Capital One is probably more a tech company than maybe a finance company. If you were to come on campus and see the teams in the way they work, in the way they interact with each other, be it the sort of interaction model between teams or the technology that they use day to day, it would seem more like a tech company, honestly, than a bank. So that's the first thing I would probably say about our day-to-day work. The culture, the data-centric culture, the values of the company, I think is another plus that I always am very proud about. We always ask ourselves, what is the right thing to do by our customers? One of the questions that a lot of times when we're bringing up new technology, new products, you would hear people asking all the time is, are we comfortable pitching this product to our loved ones, our friends, our family? So from a mission standpoint, the mission of the company is changing banking for good. That's something that we take very seriously. Also, the company very deliberately invests in talent, be it in the form of providing opportunities for internal or external training, conference attendance for our data scientists, or seeking and giving continuous feedback for longer term development. I would say development is part of the Capital One core. And this is something that was very important to me when I was joining the company, and I think it's very important to a lot of folks when they're looking for career choices and sort of next step in their journeys.
Hussein, one of the things I hear a lot in doing that, not just the podcast, but our AI staffing business, is that the caliber of candidates that come from Capital One. It's well regarded within the industry that anyone who's worked at Capital One has been well trained, worked on advanced technology, and come out a certain high standard. As somebody who's part of that leadership and management team, why is it that anyone who's worked at Capital One is held in such regard? What do you guys do behind the scenes that makes your individual team members and the team as a whole so strong?
Yeah, I think it's probably the investment that we do in talent. Obviously, we hold a high bar initially in hiring as well. But after that, I think something that we do very deliberate is investment in talent. Sometimes it's like hard investment, meaning providing trainings, internal trainings, external trainings, opportunities to attend conferences, a culture of bringing new ideas in and then critically thinking about them and assessing them. I think those are some of the things that are very much valued within the company. Also, the sort of mindset of critically assessing things, what I very generally call risk management, managing the risk of AI. There's an idea that, and it's not necessarily a bad idea, that with these advances in technology, we are able to do a lot of things that we weren't able to do in the past. And I'm talking about very broadly across different industries. What some people are calling out is the risk associated with some of these moves, be it risk related to, for example, fair treatment of customers and so on, or the risk that it brings to business. I think what Capital One does very well and works on making sure that every associate, regardless of job family, but specifically we're talking about data scientists here, something that we invest in and make sure that they fully understand is the consequences of what use of an AI tool to solve a particular problem would mean, what kind of risks would that bring in for the business, for customers, and so on. So I would say that investment contributes to what you were describing.
Final question for me, Hussein. As we record this, we're really looking at the year ahead and trying to get a sense of what you anticipate the year ahead looking like. When you look at the project roadmap, the growth plan, obviously you can't divulge too much for secrecy purposes, but what are you most excited about for the next chapter at Capital One? Whether it be new innovations or continued advancement in headcount. What sort of growth are you expecting? And what's your message to an audience of data professionals who've never considered Capital One as a place to work?
Yeah. So I think a big question on everyone's mind, especially folks in finance, is where the economy is heading right now. Coming out of the pandemic and what's been a pretty high inflationary environment, everyone is curious to see where this will go. And some people nervous about the outcomes of it all. We're very diligently sort of all of that and working on making sure that we are ready for that. So that's one side. One thing that I'm very excited about is the data environment that we're in. Going a little bit back in the data sources that were available for financial services purposes, for underwriting specifically purposes, it used to be only traditional credit bureau reports. What we're seeing in recent years is many other data sources, be it owned by the bureaus or others, becoming available and a lot of lenders using these new data sources, alternative data sources. That's very exciting. It gives us the ability to extend credit, extend financial tools to people that we might not have been able to do in the past. But that being said, use of these data sources also is not as straightforward as one might think. And there are very serious questions about some of them, about the reliability of them, whether or not they will continue to provide value through time as the economy changes and moves forward, as well as there are, questions about just ethical appropriateness of using some of them. But overall, I think this is a very exciting area that my team also works on, as well as other teams across Capital One, as well as other companies, I'm sure. So this is a very exciting area of work for us. Looking ahead, it's no secret that the job market is not as hot as it was a year or two ago, but we continue to look for top talents all the time, be it for our internship program, the summer internship program we're actively recruiting for right now, or entry-level positions or professional hiring for different teams across the company.
Hossein, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. It was great to learn about your background and also to learn more about what's going on at Capital One. Long's been regarded as one of the best places to work within data science, in finance, and the reputation you have in this field is obviously excellent and speaks to that. and great to hear about the continued investment in people that you guys are going to grow despite any short-term market turbulence. So we wish you, your team, and everyone at Capital One the best of luck in the months and years to come, and look forward to having you back on the show in the future.
Thank you, JP. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.